As you drive north on 93, the endless landscapes and vistas will fill you with an overwhelming sense of awe and humility. The temptation might be to stop and dwell at each site, but something interesting will happen. You'll find yourself wanting to move on and see what's over the next hill and the next. It's what some people call the pioneer spirit. It's that same spirit that drove early native North Americans, and as the years went by, immigrants from abroad. That same spirit still lives on today on Highway 93, the Killer Road.
Our trip up U.S. Highway 93, affectionately known as the Killer Road for its challenging length and history of fatalities, begins in northern Arizona and ends some 1,500 miles later at Glacier National Park. Although the majority of the drive is through Nevada, 93 also travels across portions of Idaho and Montana. While you'll encounter some of the most beautiful countryside in North America, you'll also find long, desolate stretches that will test your stamina and common sense. Every now and then you'll see signs and bumper stickers that read, "Pray for me, I drive 93." This was a very special drive for me, being my first trip into this part of North America. Although I'm often associated with the West because of my film roles, I'd never actually been in this area. It was a drive I felt I needed to make. Like most people, my image of the West has always been associated with the vast amounts of land populated by free spirits and groundbreakers. I was excited by the opportunity to meet some of them and learn about what was for me new territory. Every turn reveals something new and exciting. A good example is when you round the bend and cross the Arizona-Nevada state line. You'll drive right across the top of the Hoover Dam. As spectacular as the solid rock canyon walls, this giant water barrier is the Western Hemisphere's highest concrete dam. I was impressed at how the aesthetically beautiful Art Deco structure fits so naturally with its rugged surroundings. Its enormous spillways are so deep that if one were filled with water, it would be large enough to float a Navy battleship. But I couldn't help imagining the Colorado River flowing freely as it did for millions of years, so powerful it carved these enormous canyons. Realizing the river's potential use for modern man, President Herbert Hoover was convinced this great source of energy could be harnessed. In 1928, Congress passed the Boulder Canyon Project Act, authorizing the construction of Hoover Dam. The work did not begin until 1931. But the 31ers, as they were called, made up for lost time and finished the giant steel and concrete god 2 years ahead of schedule. 5,000 workers toiled 24 hours a day to complete the massive undertaking. One of the original 31ers, 93-year-old John Stafford, remembers what a job it was.
My basic salary was 75 cents an hour. That's the way wages run in those days. 1931 was the beginning of the Big Depression, and people just flocked out here by the hundreds, and we all had nicknames to go by. And for instance, the group that worked in my shift, there was 5 of us, and I was 2 gear, and one was ugly, and one was double ugly, and then they were 3 brothers there, and then the younger brother was a pretty good-looking young fella, so he was good-looking. It really was just on-the-job training, because who in the world ever had a high-scaling job or anything like that before? Of course, high-scaling, I think, was one of the most dangerous jobs there was, and once in a while, a rope would break for a high-scaler, I think, but that didn't happen very often. I can't help but enjoy looking at it and just seeing it grow from nothing to what it is. We started in the year 31, that's just where you get the 31ers. We're amongst the first ones that started working. There's just a few of us left now, And it gives you a little, I guess you could say, pride. Yeah, I'd work on the next one if I could. Yes.
After I pulled out of the mountains on the other side of the dam, I passed through Boulder City, where most of Hoover Dam's workers have lived over the years. I was told it was the best dam town in Nevada. But as I drove down the next long hill, I could see the jagged edges of the Las Vegas skyline on the horizon. From this distance, it looked like a tiny oasis in the desert. Just driving down the strip, I quickly realized Las Vegas is a lot different than my original notion of it. Whether you're looking to get married, win the big jackpot, or take the kids to a theme park, Vegas doesn't seem to mind trying to be all things to all people.
Vegas is, Wild West, and that part of it's not going to change. And I think it's great to be able to go in a lounge and see someone, singing "Do You Know the Way to San Jose," and then go into a showroom and see Penn and Teller, and then go out to another lounge and see, some magician with a lot of the hairspray doing things with birds.
I learned that when the original groundbreaker Benjamin Siegel, better known as Bugsy, decided to build an opulent hotel casino here, Vegas was nothing more than a grain of sand in the searing Nevada desert. My personal images of Vegas are those of the late 50s and early 60s, the golden age, when the town was filled with a cosmopolitan jet set of Hollywood stars, millionaires, and gangsters. I would have loved to see in Vegas then. It was the place to be. Another thing I learned about Las Vegas, even in the ultra-chic setting of its heyday, the realities of segregation still existed. Although African-American performers could perform on the Strip, their audiences were all white. This gave birth to the Moulin Rouge, the first and only hotel and casino in Las Vegas to cater to a black clientele. Today, the Moulin Rouge still operates a small lounge and a few slot machines, but caretaker Frank Harris remembers when the Grand Ballroom was electric with excitement and the showroom booths packed with celebrities.
This was the original room, and they used to have Nat King Cole's spot was over there, and it was tremendous. It opened Memorial Day weekend, 1955, and it closed October the 10th of the same year. But in the 9 months it was here, you had a multitude of acts. You had Louis Armstrong, Sarah Vaughan, Duke Ellington. They had so many singing groups and comedy acts.
Frank, tell me a little bit about the history behind the Moulin Rouge.
The reason the Moulin Rouge came to be was because of the fact that they wanted to have a first-class nightclub for the black entertainers and the black community and the people on this side of town to have something to be proud of. And so they bought this parcel, which sits on 7.5 acres of property. And they made a state-of-the-art place, as you can see. I think it was a capital idea that they done that. Oh, there was some wild times. They had Sinatra and his crew. They would come in, Sammy Davis Jr., and they would party all night long and half the day. And they done a lot for integration, even though it wasn't integrated here at the time, that we had no problems with nobody. Not a fight. There was class people that wanted to be together, wanted to enjoy good entertainment, and that's what they did.
Although originally run by mobsters back east, it is said that Vegas was swept clean and legitimized in the mid-60s once Howard Hughes dropped nearly $300 million on some of the most desirable acreage in the area. His presence alone as a master financier added an enormous degree of respectability to the city's tarnished image. Hughes' investments stimulated an unprecedented boom. I think Bugsy would be amazed at the number of hotels and casinos that line the infamous Strip today.
Architect Tony Marnell continues to break new ground in Las Vegas, having designed many of the eye-catching structures.
Las Vegas is really a town of pioneers. Most people think that it's a town about buildings and hotels and casinos, but it's really the entrepreneurial spirit that has kept Las Vegas moving. Every time you look at one of those venues, you need to look at the guy or lady behind what's going on. We don't really see the buildings here as monuments. It's the idea and the strategy of how the building's put together and then how it's operated is how we really put Las Vegas together. One of Las Vegas's biggest attractions for years has been the neon signs. This sign's been proclaimed as the best neon display in the world. And we continue to bring those attractions with bigger and better signing and lighting in all of the hotel casinos.
Once you leave Las Vegas, and if you're like me, a little poorer and a little wiser, you'll head north into the heart of the desert.
Like everyone else, when I was very young, I thought of the desert in terms of the Sahara. The American desert is exactly the opposite of that. It's colorful, it's very high, it is not sea level, it has no sand dunes except in isolated spots. I first discovered the idea of the desert when I was about 7 years old and my father was driving from Los Angeles over to Arizona. And that's when I first ran into the Roadrunner. I found out it was like a flying fish of the land. You know, it really can't fly. But what it does is go very, very fast, and then it puts its little wings out, and it sails up to the top of one of these giant saguaro cacti and vibrates to a stop and looks around. Now, how it makes a landing without sticking those spines through its feet, I don't know. Mark Twain said the coyote looked like a third-string wolf. And he said that no matter how hard the coyote tries, it's always going to look bereft and cunning. The environment always will dictate the type of humor. It's a limitless place, the desert, and well worth your attention, and always worth my attention.
I took a slight detour at the junction of 93 and 375 and found myself in the mysterious section of Nevada known as Area 51. It's not uncommon to hear sonic booms in this area. A top-secret Air Force base occupies over 3 million square acres of this territory. But when the sun sets, the locals around here will tell you there's more flying around in the night sky than just stealth bombers and fighter jets. Known by base workers as Dreamland, the highly guarded sector is absolutely off-limits to the public and anyone else for that matter. After the long drive through the barren landscape, I stopped for a much-needed hamburger, actually an alien burger, with my new friends, Pat and Chuck.
What would happen if I sort of wandered in to visit Area 51 by myself?
You wouldn't get far.
No, I'm afraid you'd be detained.
Yeah, well,
They heard you.
ooh.
It's not possible to get into the base itself. The only way that you could even get a look at it now is to back off to the top of a 7,800-foot mountain that's 26 miles away, and you wouldn't get much of a view.
What's so special about Area 51?
There have been said to me that there are alien beings there. There are craft. I'm sure that we're working in conjunction with them. Whatever's flying from there.
Where's a good spot to see these guys?
I think that the greatest concentration of sightings has been in the Tikaboo Valley in the area of the Black Mailbox, which is just a farmer's or rancher's mailbox out there in the valley.
I understand that you had an experience that happened right here at the Alien Cafe.
There was something that happened several years ago now. My husband and I were the only two people in the bar at the time, and through the center of our back door, and it's a steel-clad door, came a beam of light. This light illuminated the entire door jamb. We looked at each other and said, "Did you see what I think we just saw?" And we both talked it over and had seen the very same thing happen. The light came through the door, and we both felt that there was an entity here with us. Joe told it out loud to make itself at home, that it would always be welcome to be here. I told it, if you can come through a steel-clad door, you can damn well open a beer can or get in one of my refrigerators. So you make sure you help yourself. There's a lot of things that can't be explained. There's an awful lot of things that can't be explained.
Back on 93, north of the 375 junction, I noticed more vegetation and wildlife, and though it seemed less desert-like, I couldn't see a solitary house as I looked out in all directions. If you pull over, allow the great breadth of the land to inspire your imagination. It's easy to picture the people who lived here for centuries, as well as the wagon trains full of so many settlers heading west to the Promised Land. I could almost hear the sounds of the buckboards and the Conestoga wagons. I could feel the ghosts of those who were left along the way. I got a sense that they must have thought the land would never end. As I reached the Rainbow Canyon in central Nevada, I passed through little mining and railroad towns. When the Union Pacific Railroad carved its way from Salt Lake City to Los Angeles, little towns like Caliente were born. You can still see the orderly line of company town row houses along the streets. Another company town along 93 is Ely, the county seat of this part of Nevada. After the first wave of settlers and ranchers passed through this area, a new wave of pioneers arrived. They were looking for gold and silver. But it was copper that put Ely on the map. The Nevada Consolidated Copper Company laid claim to a prolific mine that would last a full 70 years. The miners purged the mountainsides of their wealth. By 1909, $6 million worth of copper left the Ely area, and by 1926, profits were recorded at nearly $50 million. The successful mines brought the Nevada Northern Railroad to Ely. It was truly a boomtown. With the great influx of working miners and railroadmen with paychecks in their pockets, another business came to Ely.
The history of the Big Four began when this town became a boom mining town in the 1800s. It was not called the Big Four at that time, but basically it was called Bronx Alley, this street here. They had what they call cribs, and they were little buildings that had French doors on them, and they had just room enough with a bed and a pot-bellied stove and dresser, that type of thing. And the working girls lived and stayed in the cribs, and if you wanted, you could walk up and down through the cribs and pick a lady to do your business with. Basically, I've traced it back to like 1907 is as far as I've gone, and originally a fellow named O'Neill bought it, and then he had it for about 10 years, and then after that 4 prominent businessmen bought it, and they called themselves the Big Four. That's how the name came about. So since then it's been in business and doing just fine. Inside there's 2 murals that have been there for over 50 years. They're quite well known. People from all over the world come in to see them. And the fellow who painted them, he was in Paris in the 1920s. And they're pictures of the actual red light district in Paris at that time. He came to Ely and sort of became a town drunk, and he ran up a bar tab here at the Big Four, and he couldn't pay it off, so he painted the murals to work off his bar tab. If you look at the picture, you'll see that the women, they look very much the same body and facial features, and they're all painted after his wife. He was upset with her at the time because she was messing around on him, so he painted her in the picture, and then there's a couple right in the center standing by a potted plant, and the couple there is actually what he and she both look like. So quite a history to it, quite a history. It's interesting.
Ely has had its share of good times, but like a lot of boom towns, the vein can eventually run dry. When the copper mine eventually closed, the railroad soon followed. Jobs were lost. The machinery hauled away. However, the ghosts remain.
When Nevada Northern shut down, the steam engine was done for all eternity. Steam engine number 40 was no longer a necessity to have. The steamers were cut up and demolished and scrapped, and the general manager of Nevada Northern Railway didn't want to see the 40 scrapped, so he just kept hiding it from the people in New York that would come at periodic inspections and things like that. He even moved it up to Ruth at one time, 8 miles away, to hide it up in one of the sheds up there while they were here with their inspections. And that's why we call it the ghost train right to this day.
Another great thing about Highway 93 is you'll meet other free spirits like yourself along the way. It's almost like the road brings out the individuality of everyone who travels her route.
I'm so nervous. We're traveling. Gonna freak out. This is so much fun. I just love it. My name is Jimmy Emerson, Jimmyemerson. This is Shelley.
Mr. Shelley Michaels, S-H-E-L-L-Y, M-I-C-H-A-E-L-S.
And I'm Sean M, S-H-A-W-N, and then M. Well,
would you like to buy a vowel?
Buy a vowel.
Maybe you could get a real last name.
We're doing a drag show for
the State Line Hotel.
At the State Line, and it's called Too Unbelievable. Last year it was Unbelievable, this year it's part 2. Pantyhose we go through every week, so we really need a lot of those to cover up all this burly hair. So we always have to go down to Vegas on 93 to get everything that we need. And being the costume designer in the show, you can't really find a lot of the feathers and beads and stuff up in northern Nevada, so viva Las Vegas.
My main character is Roseanne Arnold, or just plain Roseanne now. I don't even like her, but I do her in the show because, you know, pays the bills, what the hell.
I impersonate Shirley MacLaine. I've impersonated Shirley MacLaine and been her personal drag queen for 10, 12 years.
Last year I started with the show. I did Reba McEntire and Dolly Parton, and eventually I'll be doing Reba again. See, Reba?
The drive on 93 is so nice. I mean, it's beautiful scenery, and you just realize that after you've worked in Vegas and Atlantic City and New York City, you get out here and you go, this is what it's all about. So it's really great for us, and we do love Nevada, and the drive is great. It's fun. Bye. See you on Highway 93. We love it.
The last drop of civilization I found before hitting the long open road of northern Nevada is a little town called Curry. Curry might not seem like much. It only has a few small houses, a bar, a one-room schoolhouse, and a hotel that hasn't seen a guest since the days of Jesse James. But to Glenn Taylor, this might as well be Manhattan. You see, Glenn owns the whole town.
A couple of years ago, wife and I looked around and we wanted to buy a town. And since I was young, I wanted to own a town. So we found this one, and we literally bought the entire town. It's very exciting. You get to be the mayor, the police, the ambulance, rescue squad, the mechanic, chief cook and bottle washer, bartender, all around public relations man, and general advice giver. It's the place for dances, place to get together, and the only telephone around is out of here, and one of the few places that has water. The advice I'd give to you if you're thinking about buying a town is you better really like people, because you have to put up with every kind of person that comes through with all kinds of problems. And you always have to be courteous and friendly to them, because if you're not, they don't come back.
While some sections of 93 up to this point seem desolate, the next leg towards Jackpot and the Idaho state line got downright existential. I drove for 2 hours and never saw another car. It's the open range as it's been for all time. The only sign I encountered warned of wild horses crossing the road. As the big neon 93 sign in Jackpot bid me farewell to Nevada, I felt something pulling me on. When I think of Idaho, the first thing I think of is potatoes, but I found out they grow other things there as well. This part of Idaho is the largest supplier of rainbow trout in the world. And then there's sheep. The original inhabitants of this part of Idaho were the Shoshone people. Later, explorers and trappers shared the land and wild game, but eventually the Oregon Trail led wagons full of homesteaders. They used the melting snow from the nearby mountain range to irrigate their crops. The fertile land became known as the Magic Valley. The Shoshone Falls near Twin Falls, Idaho, is actually higher than Niagara Falls. It spills into the spectacular Snake River Canyon. You might remember Daredevil Evel Knievel attempted to jump this very canyon in a jet-powered motorcycle. It's comforting to know that there are people like Evil to do these sorts of things for us. Forging onward, not giving up, I headed toward Ketchum, Idaho, which lies in the heart of the Sun Valley ski area. Ketchum might be considered quaint and peaceful during the off-season, but when the snow falls, it quickly becomes a bustling hotspot for celebrities and international ski racers. Olympic medalist Peekaboo Street calls Ketchum home. But unlike the Schwarzeneggers, Willises, and other recent residents, the streets pioneered this part of Idaho many years before. Ron Street is a stonemason in Ketchum and taught his daughter Peekaboo to ski right on the hillside, which was their backyard.
So I was a corporate guy living in an urban environment looking for a way out, and 93 was the way out. As soon as I hit Highway 93, I knew I was headed in the right direction, and it led me to this beautiful, pristine resort area where I've raised a couple of great kids, my son Baba and daughter Peekaboo. And we've been here for 27 years now, enjoying this environment, and have just never regretted hitting 93 and all of the opportunity that lies along its path. Upon coming to this area, we discovered this little community of Triumph, and the wife and I decided to settle there, and it was a great place to have children. We delivered our children at home. We had a great garden and chickens and rabbits, and they had the river, they had all the game, the wild game was everywhere, and we're very happy that we've, you know, as hippies left and came here in the 60s and pursued that whole adventure in that whole direction.
The beauty of nature is abundant around this section of 93. No one knew this better than writer Ernest Hemingway. Famous for his terse, direct style, Ernest Hemingway was also known for the way in which his own life mirrored the activities and interests of his characters. Many of his works show man pitted against nature, as in his favorite sports, hunting, fishing, and bullfighting. The Pulitzer and Nobel Prize-winning author moved from Cuba to Ketchum in 1960. Plagued by illness and alcoholism, he committed suicide on July 2nd, 1961. During his time here, locals who knew him said he was completely in his element and never happier than when he was hunting and fishing the area.
Ernest first came to Sun Valley in the late 1930s, and he just fell in love with the falls here, and he established a circle of friends, and they hunted and fished in the hills around here and down south in the farm country. When Ernest came here, he fell particularly in love with an area called Silver Creek, which is south of Sun Valley, about 30 miles. During the winter on Silver Creek, there can be up to 50,000 waterfowl that come in. There's deer and elk herds that winter there and in the hills nearby. Dozens of different species of hawks, falcons, and owls. It's just a very rich wildlife area. The Hemingway house here, you'll see, was constructed in the same manner as the Sun Valley Lodge, and a person named Topping, Dan Topping, used to visit the lodge a lot and decided to build his own lodge. And he built it in 1948 and sold it 10 years later to Ernest and Mary Hemingway when they moved from Cuba back to Idaho. Ernest passed away in 1961, and Mary continued to use it on a seasonal basis, much like she did when she and Ernest had it, and much like they did when they came to Sun Valley for the falls.
Hemingway once wrote as a eulogy for a friend, "Best of all, he loved the fall, the leaves yellow on the cottonwoods, leaves floating on the trout streams and above the hills, the high blue windless skies. Now he will be part of them forever." As I made my way northward on 93, I thought I took a wrong turn somewhere as I drove through the vast lava fields which form the craters of the Moon National Monument. The way the lava flows cover the ground, it appears to have happened recently. In fact, in geological time, which I think is somewhat related to dog years, it is new. The volcanic action in this area began only 15,000 years ago, and these formations were freshly made a mere 2,000 years ago. The Craters of the Moon name was considered accurate enough by NASA. They sent crews here to train for their early lunar missions. The next town up the road is Arco, Idaho, a groundbreaking town in its own right. Arco was the first city in the world to be powered by atomic energy. Originally, the native people hunted buffalo in this part of Idaho. Later, the cattle ranchers came in. In fact, they're still here. So remember that while driving this stretch of 93. Having made it over the Idaho-Montana state line, I found Missoula, Montana tucked in a fertile valley in the shadows of the Rocky Mountains. It is populated by students, writers, loggers, and is the hub of the western part of the state. With its strong community atmosphere, liberal politics, and inordinate population of published writers, Missoula has been dubbed by some of its enthusiasts as the Paris of the West. During the 60s, the University of Montana became a mecca for leftist political thought. For a lot of Montanans, it was known derogatorily as the dance school. Author Bill Kittredge has lived here for many years and has seen Missoula become a mecca for writers as well.
About how many writers do live here?
There must be 30, 35. I don't know. There are people my age, Jim Crumley, Jim Welch, people like that. There are people moving to town, David Duncan, Beverly Lowry, people teaching the university, poets like Greg Pape and Tricia Gedeke, Earl Gantz, who's been here a long time. A lot of women writers here, Dee McNamer, Onyx Smith, Lord, the list goes on and on. I probably left a lot of people off.
Being a writer yourself, what inspired you to actually move to Missoula?
When I first came here in 1969, I was a town full of hippies, and I was from way out in the deserts of Eastern Oregon. I loved it. I thought, boy, what is this? You know, it was like a sideshow every day to me. But more seriously, there is a real interest in making the world better in this town, and a kind of willingness to give a little bit that typifies, I think, liberal politics.
you think there's any danger of losing the ambiance and special quality of this area?
Oh, you bet there is. There are a lot of people moving in from outside, and they're bringing all kinds of things with them. They want things. They want bookstores. They want amenities. These little western towns are changing very rapidly, and I like it, you know. I like to go downtown and be able to buy cappuccino if I want to. A lot of people make fun of cappuccino cowboys, but it's okay with me.
The Los Angeles Times did an article on Missoula writers, and the title of the article was Bright Lights, No Cities. So many people have been curious as to why so many writers have settled here. I think one reason is in the old days it was a cheap place to live. It was a place where you could do your writing in the morning and go fishing in the afternoon or evening. I think it naturally attracts people who are kind of on the fringes of society, so to speak, which includes writers.
I think there's kind of an underlying assumption in the question why so many writers in Montana, that is the West supposed to produce articulate, wordy people? It kind of runs against the stereotype of the West, which is of the stern or at least taciturn, almost mute hero. And in fact, what Missoula is a liberal arts college town that's had a creative writing program for a long, long time, that's attracted a lot of people to the program.
I was very impressed with Missoula's involved and active community. An example is the new carousel financed by the school children of the area. It is the first handcrafted merry-go-round built in this country in over 65 years.
That was better. Make sure you use a lot of diction when you're saying your lines. Really move your lips so we can understand every single word
Valerie
you're saying.
Lyons, director of the Missoula Children's Theater, is one of the many new trailblazers in this area.
We send out teams of adult actors, and they go into communities throughout the United States and audition children that live in that community. And they work with those children for 5 days, teaching them a full-length musical, and then they perform with the children at the end of the week. And what I want you to think about when we run through it this time is how you're going to react to other people's lines, how you're going to respond to what Lindsay is saying, or how you're going to respond to what Petey is saying. I think one of the most exciting things is because we have such a short amount of time to teach the kids the show, oftentimes we'll give a child a script and say, have these lines memorized by tomorrow. And they'll say, okay, because they don't know that they can't do that. You tell them that they can, and they think that they can. And I think that that's one thing that adults aren't as able to say, is yes, I can do that. Yes, I can put a play together in 1 week.
Hey, I've got an idea. Nah, that would be boring.
I feel that the actors with the Missoula Children's Theater are pioneers in a way, because they get into a vehicle and they drive to somewhere they've never seen before, and they go into a town where they don't know anyone, and they grasp all of these children and these new lives, and they make an exciting event for them. And they leave those children with something that they'll never forget their entire lives.
For decades, the regular folk in Missoula have drunk cold beers and played 7-card stud at Stockman's. I found that not all the progressive thought and new wave of settlers are welcomed by Montanans. After all, Missoula was originally developed as a lumber and railroading town. Depending on one's perspective, Missoula is either a working-class town with a radical university or a college town with a blue-collar base.
I think Missoula is definitely its own place in the minds of the citizens of the state. Everybody will say things like, oh, well, Missoula isn't really Montana. And what they mean is that it has a richer mix of people from a variety of backgrounds. For a lot of people, I think it's a huge relief to know that they can live in Montana and live in a community that is able to handle and thrive maybe on so many different kinds of people.
Just outside of Missoula, I drove into the Flathead Reservation, which is managed by the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Nations. Lewis and Clark, and early white settlers, found the Flathead Salish to be friendly and helpful. The relations between the two nations and the settlers were good for many years. But with the formation of the reservation in an 1855 treaty, the head chief of the Salish refused to move his people from their home in the Bitterroot Valley. The Salish chief never signed the treaty, but in 1872, a Flathead war chief did sign it and won recognition from the U.S. government as the new head chief of the nation. The original chief, Charlo, told the government agents who were pressuring him to move, "I do not want the land you promise. I do not believe your promises. All I want is enough ground for my grave."
When they were put on the reservation up in the Flathead Valley, they took the land that had the most mountainous terrain on it because they were hunters. They wanted to hunt game. They left a large valley floor unclaimed. And so after they had chosen their land in the mountainous area, the government, through the rest of the country open for white settlement, the white settlers came in, took the fertile valley floors, and today those are the most wealthy parts of the reservation. And this has created conflict because the Indians felt to give them this small piece of land and then later throw it open to white settlement made the Indians feel that they'd been tricked.
Another of the great joys of driving up this section of Highway 93 is the many opportunities to stop and participate in one of the greatest outdoor sports of all, fly fishing. Most of the rivers and streams require the catch and release policy, but we all know what's really important. It's the sheer exhilaration of the experience and always has been. Another resident of this area you might not want to meet.
The grizzly bear takes a back seat to nobody. I mean, it's king, and that's it.
Dave Weedham worked for the National Park Service for many years, observing and protecting the grizzly. Today, as more and more people move into the area, Dave spends his time trapping and relocating the bears.
The grizzly is one of the most magnificent animals we have on the North American continent, really. They are classified as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act, and consequently no hunting is allowed. The chances of seeing a grizzly bear are actually relatively small, not because they aren't there, but because they're quite wary. They are going to see you first, and they're going to split.
Although one of the most imposing figures along Highway 93, the grizzly stands as a testament to the survival spirit of this great road. As the primary source of food and clothing for the people of this area for centuries, the bison were honored and respected. But the changing times and larger populations brought about a slaughter of the animals to the point of extinction. As a response, the National Bison Range was formed in 1908. It was then that the memories of this great drive began to coalesce in my mind. I knew why I had to keep moving onward. One of the most rewarding experiences ever for me was a visit to the Salish Kootenai People's Center in Pablo. A ceremony honoring tribal elders was to take place. two couples were celebrating 50 years of marriage. It was a joyous occasion recognized with great honor amongst the people.
Let's give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
It was a great honor for me to accept a very special gift from the chief and the Salish Kootenai people.
Keep up the good work, and just keep the spirit. Thank you.
It's a long way from Arizona to northern Montana, but the experiences and beauty along the way will make you forget the actual mileage. But for those pioneers of the road who make it this far, there is a grand reward waiting at the end of the line. Known as the crown of the continent, the staggering beauty of the mountains, lakes, and meadows formed over a period of almost 1 billion years. During the last ice age, glaciers filled this land. They deepened, rounded, and straightened the park's valleys. The glaciers disappeared about 10 to 20,000 years ago, but what was left behind is breathtaking in its natural wild state.
Highway 93 is kind of the heart line through these western valleys. So it's very important to us. It's how we get from one area to another. We have a love-hate relationship with Highway 93. It takes us to our favorite fishing places, and yet it does have that element of danger involved in driving it.
And there's also this wonderful feeling of still Wild West quality. You know, I'm from New England, Teller's from Philadelphia, and there's a lot of independent spirit, which has kind of been a little bit bureaucratic and squashed in the Northeast, that has been, of course, totally destroyed in California. But still in Nevada, you know, there's only 1.3 million people in the whole damn state. And so there's this feeling that you can kind of do whatever the hell you want.
Open your eyes up and look for the beauty and the color and the verisimilitude, the distance. You can see 1,000,000 miles in all directions, and you can see if somebody's coming that you don't want to meet. Well, you can hide. It's a provocative and wonderful area.
At the end of your journey up the Killer Road, you'll feel a sense of accomplishment. You'll have challenged a stretch of land as big as the sky and won. And along the way, met a lot of pioneer spirits like yourself. Because Highway 93 has always been a road for pioneers, and always will be. And that's what makes it one of America's truly great drives.
Funding for this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you.
This is PBS.